So let's move on to two articles on signs. Article 6 has been moved and seconded as it is written in the warrant. Article 7, we're going to talk about them together.
Okay.
Article 7 has the amendment.
Yes.
Article 7 is
Amendment,
as written in the warrant, but with a little addition,
but the following change.
the following change. Can we show it, or do I have to read it?
It's right here.
No, it's not.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to steal it back from her. Thank you.
Okay, with the following change and to replace section 13.3.0.7 as follows, guidelines. Okay, everybody see that? Okay, we will be discussing these two together as they are both linked. Ms. Hughes, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, all. My name is Betsy Hughes, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 7 and a member of the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee's Signage Subcommittee. And that is a mouthful, I have to say. Along with my fellow committee members, I am joined tonight by Zoe Muller, our consulting partner and associate principal at UTL Consulting. We're all really excited to be here to talk about a project that is decades in the making, and that is signage. Now, I know zoning can be daunting and rough going, because it took me quite a while to begin to understand it. But hopefully, after tonight's presentation, you will feel comfortable with it, what we're proposing for signage. Let's start with some background. So what are the rules that we have for signage today? Currently, rules for signs are governed by the zoning district. Now, that requires it looks at whatever zoning district a business is in, such as industrial or IG, residential or RO, etc. Some areas of town have multiple zoning districts in one area. One such area is our town center. Our town center, which starts at the high school and runs down Cambridge Street to the area where Jimmy's restaurant is, if you have been there and if you could see it, because it's really not visible from this street, is actually governed by 4 zoning districts: RO, BG, IG, and IR. So where your business is located will dictate the rules you need to follow. This results in businesses within eyesight of each other having different rules for signage. What that means for the town center area is that there's a hodgepodge of signage where there are inconsistencies in size, placement, lighting, etc., which currently does not align with our master plan and isn't particularly attractive or effective. What really put this issue on the front burner was a sign on a newly constructed building in the town center a number of years ago. The concerns were that the signs were too big, too many, and was out of context with the rest of our town center. However, it was perfectly compliant with the zoning rules that are in place for our town center, because that part of town center is zoned IG, or industrial. We heard frustration and concern about signage at the time from residents, owners, as well as the ZBA, who actually shared a report with us at that time that showed that approximately 50% of their variance requests from 1980 to 2019 resulted from signage issues. So, what do we do? The ZBRC established a committee which included members from the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Building Department. We solicited input from Town Council, the Chamber of Commerce, property owners, and the International Sign Association. The first step was to learn lessons from past efforts, because there had been a number of them. What went well, what didn't? We talked to people who had been on those committees in the past, and then took lessons from prior initiatives. We put a strategy in place. It is clear that Burlington is a town where one size does not fit all. The town center is different from the mall area, which is different from the area on Wynn Street that goes down by Sullivan's funeral home. As we learned from the prior efforts, trying to establish one sign district or set of bylaws for the whole town just was not a viable approach. Therefore, we decided to create signage districts. The intent from there was to make these bylaws clear and understandable. Our goal was to have effective and appropriate signage in terms of scale, design, and context in which it sits. We wanted to assure that the bylaws align with the intent of the Burlington Master Plan, as well as the Town Center District's Design Review Rules and Regulations, which was adopted by the Planning Board to guide the development of the town center over time. This was developed in 2009, actually. You can see the effects of that in evidence today as that area has evolved. From there, the committee researched best practices in neighboring communities and developed a comprehensive set of definitions, a draft of a bylaw, and some guidelines to help translate the zoning bylaw into practical application. As we discussed at last May's town meeting, the committee knew that we needed experienced, knowledgeable support to get us over the finish line. So last summer, with your support and funding, we engaged Util Consulting, a well-known and respected firm who has broad experience working with Massachusetts towns, to be our consulting partner. First, we provided background information, such as the master plan, the design regulations document, and drafts of the work that we had done to help accelerate the learning process. We had an aggressive schedule because we knew we wanted to be here tonight. But we worked together to develop a plan to move this project forward. In early August, we took them on a tour of our town center, where they were able to get out, walk around, take pictures, and ask questions about what they saw. From there, we saw input from town center businesses, property owners, and the Chamber of Commerce. We held 2 focus groups and sent out a survey to about 75 town center businesses. We got a lot of feedback, as I'm sure you can imagine, from all of that. We'd like to share a little bit of what we heard with you tonight. From a visual perspective, they confirmed that lighting was important and liked the gooseneck lights, which the planning board has been encouraging. They also were clear that visibility from the street was a problem, as it is poor for drive-by traffic, and that frontage signs would be very helpful and would show vibrancy in the area. They were clear that they wanted to be seen, but they want it done tastefully. Administratively, the current rules were confusing and complicated. They wanted the new rules to be clear about what they would need to do in order to comply, and they wanted to avoid the variance process, which was expensive and time-consuming. They also had some general thoughts that we thought would be interesting to share with you tonight. First being that the beer garden this fall was a big hit and brought people into that area, many of whom had never been there and didn't even know that these stores were there. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know that there was a barber shop there until I started this project, and I've got a son, a husband and a son and 5 grandsons. So, but I know now, and Buck's Place is pretty cool. They were also clear that the town needs to have a better connection to small businesses and show interest in supporting them. Putting all this data together with best practicing, balancing the needs of the town, the businesses, and residents resulted in what I'm here to share with you tonight, and that is 2 bylaws. Let's take them one at a time. The first, Article 6, establishes Burlington signage districts and a map of the first such district, the town center. The second, Article 7, has 2 parts. The first part creates standard definitions with general rules for all signage districts. So the second part creates the first signage district, the town center, with requirements and a use table. This is beneficial to all so that signage regulations are now in one place for our town center. Please note that this is a zoning change. So you won't see immediate changes, but it will happen over time as businesses change hands, signage gets updated, or buildings constructed. As requested by our focus group, the criteria for when signs need to change to comply with new rules are clearly outlined in the bylaw. Again, this bylaw is only for the town center, as shown in this map. It's a little bit different than what you have in the warrant, but at last now you can see that it does go from the high school down Cambridge Street and ends at the plaza where Jimmy's Restaurant is located. This is the only district that we're talking about tonight. Over time, with the town meeting approval, there may be more of them. With a favorable vote tonight, the structure will be in place to accommodate such additions. Next is the town center signage bylaw itself. The first section of the bylaw to create signage districts. There are 4 pages identifying the definitions of signage types such as flat signs, awning signs, window signs, etc. Definitions are followed by general rules that would apply for all signage districts, such as how to apply for a permit. It defines who enforces the rules and clearly identifies installation and maintenance standards. This section is followed by the specific requirements for what we propose for our first signage district, the town center. The town center signage district section identifies what is allowed and what is not, how many, how much, what is excluded, and the specific regulations for allowable signs in the permitted sign table. An example of this table, which I'm sure you've seen in your warrant, is like this. As you can see here, although it's kind of an eye chart, the table identifies specific information about the sign type, dimensions requirements, quantity, lighting, and other requirements. The next thing we did was to develop a draft of the Burlington Signage District Guidelines. The purpose of these guidelines is to provide an easy-to-read guide for applicants, residents, businesses, property owners, as well as the building department, ZBA, planning, and others, to help translate the bylaw into practical application. These guidelines simply summarize and add clarity to illustrate the regulations. It outlines the application process for permits and provides a visual and graphic view as to assure that everyone has a common understanding of sign types, what is allowed and what is not. These guidelines are administered by the planning board. So if Articles 6 and 7 pass tonight, they will take this draft, work with the appropriate parties to finalize it, hold public hearings, and ultimately adopt the result. Just to give you a quick overview of what they cover, let me show you this. Now, this is clearly an eye chart, and there's no way that you're going to be able to read it. But what it does convey is how thorough and searchable the guidelines are. They cover everything from the map to the process, sign types, regulations by tier, which is a common concept used in the signage world, based on 3 tiers. For example, if you're driving down Cambridge Street on the hunt for some ice cream, what kind of sign do you need to see a business without causing an accident? That's a Tier 1 sign. Now assume you pull into the parking lot and don't know where the store is. What kind of sign would you show without causing an accident in that situation? That's a Tier 2 sign. And finally, when you park your car, what kind of sign do you need to find the specific store that you're looking for? Well, that's a Tier 3 sign, one that you can see as you walk around that area. Lastly, the guidelines give examples with pictures. Let me quickly walk you through some of examples of that. First are the design guidelines. As you can see, this shows a sign. And you look at A, it shows what the materials are required. If you look at F, it shows you a maximum letter height. There are illustrations that show how to measure, which is clear as it shows the storefront clearly, how to measure, a measurement is made. It provides examples of different types of signs with specifications like height, lighting, etc. Clearly, this is an awning sign. And again, the letter corresponds to the requirements for that sign type. The guide also shows the signs in the context of where they might be located, showing not only size requirements, but also graphically showing things like required landscaping and measurements. As I said before, this is a zoning change, so nothing will change right away. But if this bylaw passes tonight, maybe we can help accelerate change. So we asked UTIL for some ideas for potential incentives to help encourage businesses to comply early. The initial ideas were things like providing financial assistance in some form to be clear about what kind of changes would qualify, such as repairs, new signs, or lighting improvements. Next was, what mechanisms would we use? Fee waivers? Well, signage permit in Burlington costs $50. So that would be not much of an incentive, but it would be a start. Or maybe we can put together grants, either in the form of direct grants or matching. But then how would we fund it? Well, others have used things like ARPA funds, although I understand we have used ours at this point, so that's not an option. But there are grants out there that we should be able to explore. And finally, technical assistance in the process. One thing we heard from our focus groups is that many business owners are not technically oriented, so maybe we can offer them assistance in the application process. Or maybe we can work with local designers or signage companies to provide some sort of discounted service. There's work to be done on this for sure, as these are just a few ideas, but if approved, a committee can be formed to look at creative ways to move this forward. So that's it for signage, but before I end, I really want to thank some individuals who've helped us throughout this entire process. Rick Parker, President of the Chamber of Commerce, who has provided advice and guidance to us throughout this process. Mike Murray, who originally in his ZBA role was a member of the committee, but even after he left the ZBA, he put in hours of reviewing documents, providing feedback, and suggestions for improvement. Lisa Mead with her legal counsel, Melissa, who helped us identify UTIL, actually, and has helped us every step of the way, and Mark Duppel, who, as well. And of course, my fellow committee members, Sally, Sherry, Ernie Cavino, our planning board rep, and Mark Duppel representing the town building department. We are also excited and really grateful for the support of the Select Board, Planning Board, Land Use Committee, and the ZBRC, as well as letters of support, which hopefully you were able to read from the Chamber of Commerce, Mike Murray, the Burlington Director of Economic Development, and our Inspector of Buildings. To wrap this up, these bylaw proposals are an important step towards realizing the vision of Burlington's master plan. They establish a sound structure for future signage districts, define and clarify signage regulations for our town center businesses, and have broad support across our community. With that, I will end, but I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Let's go to committees that may have something to say on this. The Planning Board, is there a vote? And any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Gaffney, Planning Board. Planning Board, again, is, as Betsy said, was unanimous, 7-0-0. I would like to thank the committee and Betsy and the rest of the folks there. I've been on a couple of failed attempts for that. I know how difficult that was to do, so thank you very much. I think this is a game changer.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Land Use Committee, Mr. Wadilla.
Right there.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dave Wadilla, Land Use Committee Chair. We took both of these articles together. We were 7 favorable, 0 opposed, 0 abstained. The favorable positive discussion, there's a significant amount of work and a framework for future sign requirements, excellent clarity in the requirements, and clarity on what will trigger the requirement to conform. On the unfavorable side, the enforcement requirements do not change and are weak. Thank you.
CBRC.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. ZBRC voted 6-0-0 in favor of both of those articles.
Thank you. Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jim Tiggers from the Select Board. Like Bill, myself, I was also on several committees to try to do this, so apparently, Betsy, you and your group are less smarter than Bill and I. So, again, thank you for all your efforts, and the Select Board voted 5-0-0 in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did anybody, any committee I missed? All right, let's open it up for discussion. Mr. Sinesi?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Adam Sinesi, Precinct 1. I want to make it clear that I think this is a very well thought out plan that you've presented to us, and I appreciate the time that was put in. I may very well vote for this plan and support this, but I was under the impression that the Zoning Board of Appeals had taken a position on this. Can we hear from the Zoning Board of Appeals?
You know, the Zoning Board of Appeals really doesn't have a role in this, but I will allow them to make their comments.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jeff DeBona, Chairman, Zoning Board of Appeals. We voted 0-5 on this. We had a few concerns and had some back and forth on this issue. The issues of concern that we had was the concern of pre-existing conditions, and when we hear most of the signs in town, and a long-standing practice that we've had is when we give a sign permit, we go with no other signs, even if by right. So it automatically triggers a hearing. So we wanted to know if this superseded that. Town council provided a letter. Betsy was able to reach out to her, and Lisa provided it saying, yes, those conditions would still stand. So any of the buildings that we've currently put that condition on, they would still have to come to us even with this bylaw put in place. The second concern we had was, why isn't this being done as an amendment to the overlay district? I know there was some concern because I used the wrong term. I said PDD instead of overlay in one of the meetings, and since corrected that. But we were wondering why it wasn't done that way. And where planning already has jurisdiction on it in the signage for new site plan reviews, why we had to go down this path. In the zoning bylaws 8.5.8, design requirements, planning board has in their jurisdiction facade and exterior building treatment, including the style and size of all signage affixed to buildings. And that was, why isn't this coming from planning department instead it's coming from ZBRC? And that was it as far as the ZBA had on that. Thank you.
Ms. Hughes, comments, response to those comments?
Yes, thank you. As Jeff said, we did, when we first went into their meetings, the issue was raised about the determinations that they had made, and town council did provide the information that prior rulings would stand. The discussion from there, excuse me, was based on what was, at the time, an inaccurate understanding of how the bylaws worked. And I know Liz is here, and she can talk a little bit more about this than I can in terms of the role of the planning board. But I did write a letter to the ZBA clarifying the facts and corrected the misunderstandings prior to their meeting on the 21st. And it was provided to them 2 weeks before the meeting. I also had concerns because when we went to the meeting, which was supposed to be a briefing initially, it was very clear that many members of the ZBA had not read it when we were there to actually discuss it. The letter that I sent to them, unfortunately, I followed the process, but it was not delivered to committee members with the corrections that were made to the prior assumptions. And so when asked if there was anything in that letter, the chair said that would influence the vote. The chair indicated no, there was not, which I believe was misleading and inaccurate. But the board said that they did not want to revote it. One or two of the board members said it wouldn't matter what the letter said, they weren't going to change their mind anyhow, so, and they just wanted to add it to the minutes. And aside from that, as I understand it, they should not have voted at all. But as to the planning board, as I understand it, has no jurisdiction over these signs. And Liz, I want you to speak to that, please, because that is an area where I think a lot of the confusion resides with the ZBA, and so that is the reason why we are doing this bylaw. We're doing it in two parts. One is we want to create a signage district concept, which we talked very clearly about. That's what we're doing, setting a structure. So in the future, when we have signage districts that may come up, that we have a structure for it to fit in. So it will grow with us as our needs grow. The second was homing in on the town center, which is the first of the town signage districts to be defined. So this was a strategic move as well as a practical move in creating this bylaw. Liz?
Sure, so I can speak to how signage works from our side of things on the regulatory side. So the zoning bylaw has sign regulations in Article 13, and those are administered and interpreted by the building department because they are they deal very much with dimensional things, and so it's always been the building department that has handled them, and the building department is the one that determines whether or not a sign needs to go to the ZBA or is okay to go ahead. And so as far as the planning board is concerned, the planning board cannot deviate from the sign bylaw. They can't deviate from the zoning bylaw. And as far as the town center overlay is concerned, so we have, base zoning, our zoning bylaw handles that. On top of that, you have the overlay, the town center overlay. And the town center overlay was drafted and voted on by this town, and the rules and regs have never had sign regulations in them. Never had specific sign regulations in them. I know that it's been a very hot topic for many years. Signage has been in this town, and I think that as far as the planning board taking the lead, I feel like it is something that it's a hot topic. It's something that I'm really glad that the ZBRC took on, because I think it does need to come from you guys. You need to feel like you are have a stake in it. And then the other side is getting actual consultants, which I think is the key, to get subject matter experts to come in and really look at what is going on elsewhere and how things work. And so that, I think, is kind of where we're at. That's all.
Okay. Again, this is a strategic proposal where we're setting up a structure for signage within our town, which will go from now. We're talking about the town center signage, but over time, there will probably be other signage districts that we would want to define. And now we have a place where we can do so. We've got the structure.
No, we're not getting in a debate between you, the ZBA, and the ZBRC on this.
I wanted to clarify 2 points. about what I read off. Liz was quoting Article 13. I'm talking about Article 8 as far as the town center overlay goes in itself. With the design requirements, what I just read off, 8.5.8.
Mr. Moderator, through you, can I have Sherry respond to that, please?
Certainly, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sherry Ellis, Chair of the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee. Regarding 8.5, that is specifically for town center. This article is Article 13, which is signage districts for the entire town. We cannot put the signage for the town center within just the town center overlay because the rest of the structure would not work. We're doing this for a global signage district, and then we will add these little districts into it. I don't know how to make it much simpler than that. So 8.5 is only relevant to the town center, and as you stated, the planning board can work with the designs of the facade and the signs, but ultimately it is the building inspector that approves signs or disapproves them, as the case may be. Thank you.
All right, let's move on. Further comments or questions? Yes, sir, Monty. Mr. Pearson.
Monty Pearson, Precinct 3. I would like to say to the Board of Selectmen that the attitude and comments of the Zoning Board of Appeals reveals that there might be a need for change in the personnel on that committee. And I know that you folks are the ones that put them there, so I hope that you've been listening to this discussion.
Further, Ms. Meyer, please.
Thank you, Kathy Beyer, Precinct 2, also a member of the ZBRC, and there from the very first meeting, and right at the very beginning, just for historical context, Rick Parker and a couple of other people from the Burlington Chamber of Commerce came and said, is there anything that you can do about signs? We've gotten it close to being done a couple times, could not get it across the finish line. And so that was 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago, that this got started. This represents a tremendous amount of work by committee members who are not on salary. So just wanted to clarify, the historical context was, it was asked for by the business community in Burlington. Thank you.
Anything additional? I believe, you've had your talk back.
I want to speak as a town meeting member, not ZBA. I represent the ZBA separately on there. I have two concerns of my own.
All right, let's hear your concerns, Mr. DeBona. And there should be no mention of the ZBA in your concerns.
I am not mentioning the ZBA in my concerns. Jeff
Thank
DeBona,
you.
Precinct 3. So my two concerns, and I want to preface too, I am not against this. I think we're just not quite there yet. So I appreciate the work that everyone's putting in. I've been to the meetings. I'm a member of ZBRC. But my concerns are signage is also written into the general bylaws. Why isn't a revision being proposed with that? And the second one is what's being proposed doesn't provide for fines for noncompliance.
Mr. Moderator, let me respond to the last one first. Fines are absolutely in this. If you read the bylaw, you will see that it references a section of the zoning bylaws which talks about the offenses and the fines for them. Now, as was mentioned by someone earlier, the fines, unfortunately, we tried to make them much harsher, but council advised us that we couldn't, and so that we had to go with the fines that were already in the bylaw, and so they are there. And I would appreciate, Jeff, any support you'd like to give in terms of ZBRC. Actually, I'm going to leave it at that.
Anything further? Seeing nothing, let's, this is okay, we have two articles, again, just as like in the previous, they are linked together inextricably. I'd like to vote them together. They both require a 2/3 with your approval. Can I have a motion to that? Second? Any discussion, any objections? All in favor? Thank you. All right. Now let's vote on the two articles here. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. There being 4 opposed, it's a clear 2/3 majority, and Article 6 and Article 7 pass. We got a lot of business yet to do. So you think you'll be able to get it all done on Wednesday? All right, we have a motion to adjourn on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is defeated. We continue. Let's move on to Article 9. 8, 9, they're all the same. All right, Article 8, Middle Housing Unit, Middle Housing Overlay District. It has been moved and seconded by the Ways and Means Committee, and it is as written in the warrant, except for the end note for Part 2 shall read, 4.2.1. Pound, attached mixed-use dwellings are only permitted in the Middle Housing MH District in the Civic Center and Central Business District. Okay.
I'm behind you.
Liz, take it away. Ms. Monventure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I will be brief. I am here to present the Middle Housing District, and the Planning Board has kind of been working on this for a while, and we started, thinking about just adding a definition to the bylaw, but it kind of slowly morphed into its own district. So why are we doing this? What are we doing? We are creating a middle housing sub-district within the town center overlay. And this is going to allow certain parcels to have ground floor commercial with residential units above at a density of 12 units an acre. So that is ground floor commercial, and then 2 other levels of residential. We are targeting parcels that are directly about single-family residential zones. We've heard from neighbors that what's existing is a little bit disruptive, and we'd like to have a softer transition between commercial and 3A and kind of single-family residential. So there are 3 areas that we are targeting. There are 13 parcels, and it's a total of 24 acres. So why are we doing this? So this is a direct response, or the Planning Board's response to the MBTA Communities Act. I was here with you last May. I talked about how MBTA communities, we needed to do it for the state, and that, there was a small portion of town that it could develop into new housing. And we said, there are other items that we, as the Planning Board, and that the town needs, and this is one of the needs that we have sought to fulfill, which which is middle housing. It provides an option to revitalize the town center. It allows for more single-level living. It's something I've heard for years. It's something I heard about at the Civic Expo, people saying, I really want to downsize, but there's nowhere to go, no place that's single-level. It's also in keeping with previous planning efforts. It's clear in the master plan and the housing needs assessment that we need to diversify our housing stock. And so adding middle housing allows that. So what is this? So we have, again, 24 acres. In your warrant, it was printed in black and white, and so it was not super clear where we were talking about. I do have color maps on the table up back, but this is the zoning district. So you have Terry Ave, which is up top, or down, Grant Ave, and then the Mass Glass site. And so there is 24 acres, and then you see for each. The buildable area total, so that is taking into account setbacks. So side, rear, and front setbacks. And then the units per acre total. So if you took the buildable area and then you just, did the calculation at 12 units per acre, you would get a total of 213 units throughout this district. That does not take into account any parking, and it does not take into account any required setback from residential as well. So 213 is almost certainly an unlikely number of housing units that will happen in the town center, definitely under 200. And it's a type of housing that's completely different from what we heard earlier. So what kind of housing is this? What does this mean? What are the development standards that we are going to require and is in the language of the bylaw? So again, it's ground floor commercial, so that means we're maintaining existing commercial tax base. That was key in the discussions. Again, 12 units an acre, that's less than the 15 units an acre that MBTA zoning requires. So it's kind of a smaller development. Again, 3-story maximum, that's what exists in the town center now. And so we're keeping it. You still need to account for parking. So for commercial space, it's usually four spaces per 1,000 square feet for just a regular business. For restaurants, it's higher, plus 1.5 spaces for every residential unit. So that adds up. You have that square footage plus the drive aisle, so you're chopping down your buildable area there. We are requiring that the parking happens behind the building. We are looking to create the true walkable mixed-use town center that was originally envisioned all those years ago, almost 20 years ago, is crazy to think about. It's 15% affordable, which is a requirement in the town. We'll be adding additional development standards in the town center rules and regs, specifically regarding this district, which, again, requiring, sidewalks, mixed-use spaces, dining on the sidewalk, setbacks for buildings. And again, this is an option. We're giving property owners an option. So property owners can choose to develop under this middle housing overlay, which only allows single family, it only allows commercial with 2 stories of residential. They can choose to develop under the existing, CBD or Civic Center overlay, what's existing, or they can choose the base zoning district. There are many different base zoning districts in the town center. So this is just an option for what people can choose from. Community benefits. So why are we doing this? This is, for those of you that were around for the town center, this is all should be familiar. It's an emphasis on fine-grained building and street form, safe walkable neighborhoods, so you park and walk. A soft transition between commercial and residential, 3-story mixed units, you have traffic calming, the closer a building is to the street, the slower cars go, park and walk development pattern, you need to have wide sidewalks, activate the sidewalks, street trees, street furniture, all the things. A clear definition of public space, which is that sidewalk and that community feel. And then it creates a new third place. So third place in the, in the planning and development world really means, we have our home, which is where we sleep. We have our, our work, which is where we go to work, but where do we hang out? Where do we go? It really used to be the mall, you know, in the 80s, 90s. It was like you go to the mall and hang out. That was your third space. But now we're thinking about the sidewalk and commercial spaces like that as new, this third place. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to go back. So one of the other reasons that we chose these districts is because in order for property owners in these districts to, achieve the requirements of the middle housing district, they really cannot be retrofit. So these are parcels that would need complete redevelopments. I understand that when the town center first came to be, there was a debate, are we going to require all these things from existing developers or existing developments, and, it kind of ended up that incentives were kind of added to the zoning, but this is kind of strategic. These, really couldn't be retrofit, and so you would really see that town center vision come to life were this to happen. So this is, when I read the zoning bylaw for town center, and when I read the town center rules and regs, and when I hear from people who are intimately involved in it, this is the vision that I kind of see as what the vision was for the town center, and I'm hoping that this can be a step towards that, should a developer choose to do so. I also want to mention that, we're coming up on 20 years of the town center, and it deserves to be looked at again, so that's just a plug for something that the planning department's looking to do going forward. So with that, Mr. Moderator, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, let's hear from the boards. Excuse me, Planning Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Gaffney again, Planning Board. So first, I'd like to thank the staff for putting this together. Again, we mentioned in September with the MBTA communities, we heard from you folks saying we're not doing enough for young families and older folks here, and I think I heard that from someone today as well. And this is what that's trying to solve. In addition to that, it maintains and continues with the vibrancy of the town center. Liz, talked about the MBTA communities piece of that, and again, we didn't do too much with the town to change that. So this is our way of doing it versus the state dictating it. Also in line with the master plan and the mass housing assessment. So thanks again. 7-0-0 unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney. Land Use Committee, Mr. Wadilla.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dave Wadilla, Land Use Committee. We were 7 favorable, 0 opposed, 0 abstained. The positive comments were that this was really a true mixed use. It aligns with the town center master plan, creates more walkable living space within the town center area. It's an incentive to provide owners to rebuild and improve the properties that are there now, and meets a different need than the mall area. On the unfavorable side, there's a concern that there's a rush to densify housing. Thank you.
ZBRC, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. ZBRC voted 5 in favor, 1 opposed on this article.
Thank you. Okay, discussion, question from the body. What, you're all tired? Jeremy.
Jeremy Harrington, Precinct 2. Has there been any input from the landlords about any want to redevelop? I know this is just setting up for long-term future.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, yes, we did speak with property owners there. We did speak with Mike Murray Jr., had him review it. He seemed favorable to it. He would have liked to see more property involved in it, obviously. But he did seem to think that, this was a good step forward, a good step towards, that town center vision that you've been searching for, And, again, just to reiterate, if a property owner did want to build middle housing and they weren't in the overlay, they would have to come to this body to rezone their property into the middle housing overlay. So just to be clear on that.
Ms. Asher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kate Asher, Precinct 4. So I'm generally in favor. Just a couple questions on some practical points. So when I think of the mall, you've got the public, access to, anybody from the public. You've got mall security. Things are very open, glass. You can see in, there's, all of this. But now you've got kind of that environment in someone's home. So just, thoughts around security, requirements for like a fishbowl effect, anything like that for the front facade. So can you speak to that? And then the other question I had is, when I hear of single level living, and having had mobility issues, the issue of stairs, right? So is it stairways or an elevator, or is there an option? And if there are stairs, does the owner of the residence have control over them to put like a lift or something like that if they needed assistance?
Mr. Moderator, sure. So I can address the first question. So the first question is the fishbowl effect. So residents, there would not be any residents at the ground floor level. So, if you are at the second floor or the third floor, you would, I guess shades would come into account there. But generally, the first floor, we want to have transparency for those commercial spaces because we want to create an inviting place to walk, an inviting place to look at things. And so that is, the fishbowl effect is actually beneficial for the commercial portion of this. But I would imagine that, with the planning board, and this would all have to come through the town center design review process, that, if, that would definitely be something that we could consider in discussions with a developer. And then the second question regarding accessibility, don't quote me on this. The building department are they are truly the ones that know the ins and outs of this, but it is my understanding that if you have a multi-level building, in order to meet ADA, you need to have an elevator.
Yes, Ms. Angelo.
Pat Angelo, Precinct 5. Are there any homes in back of these areas? I'm trying to picture them.
So let me change slides to kind of orient you. Sorry, through you, Mr. Moderator. So Terry Ave, yes. So we have heard from residents in the Terry Ave neighborhood. So we're thinking Arthur Woods and Woodcrest Ave. There are neighbors there that have stated that they would like to see a softer transition between commercial and residential. That there are warehouses there, and it's something that they would like to see. So we're giving property owners the option to do that. There are also residences behind Grant Ave. There's Crest Haven Drive. And so that area, this again is a softer transition. And then the Mass Glass site is also does abut residential, but that's all part of the plan.
Putting 2 levels on top of, the ground level, are these buildings going to cast a giant shadow over the residential homes that are in back of these?
They shouldn't with the setbacks. There is a required setback between the building, the buildable area, and the residentially zoned property. So there's that. It's also something that would be taken into consideration during the planning board process when we look at things. But generally, their planning board, working for them for years, there would be no, want or, wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. So I would say probably not.
Okay.
Mr. Webb. Hold on, get a microphone. Thank you.
Dave Webb, Precinct 7, Land Use Committee. Liz, we talked about this at Land Use. I thought it might be worthwhile you're mentioning again about the used bookstore site, used books, which would seem to be ideal for this kind of development, and what the owner thinks about this. And I think you talked to him about this, right?
Through you, Mr. Moderator. So yes, I have spoken to him. So that property is not in this overlay district right now. It is definitely something that we could see come to this body in the future, should they choose to do so. This was done strategically. We didn't want to go, all in, all at once. We chose, spots that we've really felt could use redevelopment, could use a revitalization, could use a little help. The Mass Glass site in particular has been sitting for years, and I've talked to so many developers, tried to work it out, so I'm hoping this is the key. But that was, so hopefully something will come through with that site, but not with this proposal.
Yeah, right now it's kind of an eyesore, the parking lot in front and so forth, so thank you.
Ms. Glantz.
Hi, Lori Glantz, Precinct 1. I happen to be a business owner in the Purple District, right next to True North. So, question, clarification, the blue zone versus the purple zone. Is the purpose to move the businesses that have been there for 10, 12 years up to Cambridge, or are you focusing them towards the back on Grant Ave? And if you're focusing on Grant Ave and not bringing them to Cambridge Street, and you're demolishing our business buildings, as Mr. Murray owns all of that, we're just going to be demolished and then rebuilt, or moved up to Cambridge Street, but the zones are different? It's blue and purple. So if you could just speak to the intent of where to focus the businesses, that would be helpful.
Sure, absolutely. So the intent is not to displace businesses. The intent is to allow developers to decide what they would like to do. The area on Grant Ave, it might, it might be it's not True North. It's behind that area. So what we have found is that development that happens where you have mixed use, a lot of the times, the housing above carries the rent for the businesses below. So when you hear people say, well, if I demolish the building and I put a new building in, I'm going to have to raise the rent. That may be the case, but not as dramatically as you would think, because most of them carry the rent of the housing carries the rent of the businesses below.
No, I think that makes economic sense. What I'm asking is the intention to bring the businesses that are set back from Cambridge onto the street closer to Cambridge Street? Is that the intent?
No.
Because that's the parking lot and it's a different zone. So True North and Roots Yoga and Schoolhouse Ice Cream, you said that the buildings are intended to be demolished.
No.
Oh, I thought.
No, that's all behind there. True North is not included in this.
Okay, so the way I'm reading the map is we're on that corner, so is our building not on that map, is what?
So this area is going to remain the same. This area, they're kind of single level garages.
Yep, I drive by there every day. I park over there every day. So True North that section is intended to being left alone. Correct. Okay, I'm sorry. So when I read the purple,
yeah,
I just didn't see another purple. Do you know what I mean? Because the car place is behind me, which is on Grant, but it's just not reflected on that map.
Right.
Right, I'm saying that's the car place that we're just not on the map.
Right.
Okay. All right. We just didn't get it. Okay. So just curious. So I guess the so you're going to bring revise Grand Ave?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sachs, and then we'll get up to the gentleman in the back.
Hi, John Sachs, Precinct 7. It strikes me that in my very brief 6 months in architecture school before they threw me out, one of the things I learned is that a street-level set of stores with apartments above creates a very vital kind of neighborhood. You see it all over Europe. You see it all over successful towns in the United States. It strikes me that the big chunk there is Cherry Ave, which is warehouses right now. It's essentially sort of a dead zone in terms of, I mean, nobody would walk down there. There'd be no reason to. It strikes me that this plan, if those owners would go for it, would create an incredibly rich, vital area with stores all the way down, extremely walkable, and you could have, as you pointed out, very affordable apartments upstairs, because those apartments above businesses, they're never going to be very, very high end. They're just not. That's not where very wealthy people want to live. They're going to be affordable. So you're going to have people living there, and you're going to have all these affordable stores. To me, it sounds like if the owners will bite, it would make a tremendous improvement on that Cherry Ave wasteland of warehouses. So.
Gentleman way up the back who's hiding underneath the baseball hat.
Jason Brooks, Precinct 6. Just curious, has there been any traffic studies in regards to, with 3A being narrowed with this?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, there have not. What I will say is that what's existing there, the parking ratio and the parking calculations of what's existing there now would not really change. As far as the housing is concerned, housing generally does not generate nearly as much traffic as commercial does. And so I'm not as concerned about that as well. But as far as if something were to develop, we would require a traffic study and a traffic memo that would have to come to the planning board before anything could be built, and we would have to analyze it and do all the things. So.
Excuse me, ma'am, are you a town meeting member? You need to sit over here. All right, well, that's fine. And go sit in the corner. Go ahead.
Take one. Thank you. I'm on Cresthaven, and a couple questions. So one is we've had some developers actually trade with homeowners spaces they've bought there because of the conservation concerns, the flooding, the terrible flooding that we had this year. I own 2 homes on Cresthaven, and now I own 1 because of the terrible flooding. And so I'm wondering, I don't know if you could put the map back up, but I'm wondering if it's even viable to put in new housing and redevelop that area with all the issues that have been going on since August of last year.
Go ahead,
So I can
Liz.
speak to that. So if, so again, this is, giving an option. So if a developer were to come and propose changes, they would have to go through all the different departments. First of all, they would have to do, test pits to see where the water is. They would have to do stormwater analysis. They would have to correct a lot of the current issues that are there, and it might be that they wouldn't be able to. But we are, we're providing an option, and maybe they wouldn't get 12 units an acre. But, it's just an option to provide a different type of use in the town center.
Yes, this gentleman here.
Jim Frazek, Precinct 6. Just a couple of questions, actually, question or comment. The buildable height that's allowed now, I'd just like, comment on that. So it sounds like 3 stories is what's proposed. And then second question would be, kind of heard, property owners of these properties, seem to be in favor. But was there been any input from any of the abutters, and kind of, it wasn't really mentioned, but, kind of the property owners there along, was it Elm and Edgemont, and then, Crest Haven as well?
So the majority, so we have been hearing for years, the planning board has been hearing for years from the property owner or the single-family homeowners adjacent to Terry Ave that they would like to see something else. So that is a known item. And then the rest were kind of looked at in terms of what needs to be redeveloped. The Mass Glass site is something that has been almost vacant for 10 years, trying to give it some kind of life. So I haven't heard from any neighbors there. And as far as the Crest Haven, this is the first that I've heard of flooding issues at the Crest Haven area. I know there's a big grade change, but that would have to be corrected by any developer that were to come in. So yes to the Terry Ave, no to the other 2 areas. Simply as that.
Mr. Tate.
David Tate, Precinct 5. From a zoning perspective, so Mass Glass site, obviously I know it's on the street, perfect for retail, so this concept definitely works. Terry and Grant, the tenant base that's there now, Terry, you've got Northern Business Machine, you've got Iron Mountain. So you're not necessarily going to be keeping those tenants there while redeveloping the site and building up. Same thing with Grant. A lot of industrial space, what have you. The tenant base, if you redevelop it, chances are, is that going to change to more of a retail location? Because you're not going to kind of keep those tenants that are in there while you build residential above. It just won't work. So what do you envision the ground floor base being on those sites?
I would envision the ground floor. You're correct in your assumption that the ground floor base would be mostly commercial. It could be retail, it could be businesses, you could get an architect, law offices in there, but you are correct that Iron Mountain is probably not going to stay on the ground floor of a mixed-use building.
Mr. Crew.
Michael Prue, Precinct 4. How many parcels does this incorporate, and how many landowners are there?
So there are 13 parcels. They make up 24 acres. I don't know the total number of landowners, but they are diverse. I know that Northern Business Machines owns their own property. I know that Murray owns some of the property on Grant Ave, not all of it. I know that there is a real estate investment group that currently owns Mass Glass. So there are multiple entities.
Mr. DiTucci.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dan DiTucci, Precinct 6. On the Mass Glass site, when you see 4 units there, we're talking about 4 commercial spaces and then 4 residents upstairs. How does that work? It says 4 units.
So when it says Mass Glass 4 units, that's just the number of residential units that could be built there. However the commercial developer wants to put on the first floor, they can do whatever they feel the market demand is. But these numbers are just on housing.
Right, because those 4 units on the bottom, if they are 4 commercial units, let's say 1,500 square feet each, I'm not sure what the total square footage is, and then there's 4 apartments upstairs, So that's residents upstairs, and then you got people working in the stores, and then you've got customers. That seems like a very, very small lot to have all these cars parked there. The people that live upstairs, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 parkings. So how can something like that pass the zoning in the town right now?
So again, this is also dependent on property owners doing the details, and they do have to meet the parking requirements. The Mass Glass site, there's the Mass Glass site, but then the same ownership group also owns the parcel in the back.
The house in the back.
And the house in the back.
Right.
So, we've seen proposals that have never come to fruition about, using the site of the house as maybe parking or having parking underneath, some, podium-style parking. So, you'd have to be creative as a developer, and so that's.
Right, okay. And I think on the Terry Ave site, there's probably at least maybe half a dozen property owners there anyhow. So this is something that we just we're going to do the zoning ahead of time. And if they want to do this, I mean, I don't know how they're all going to get together and agree on what to do. Or they're just going to, all 4 will just hopefully sell it to one person who says, I want to develop it and just buy all the parcels up. It just seems like a very dense area to have 4 owners, and have multifamily housing, with a commercial component on the bottom. But it'll have to work out, right?
I mean, that's up to the developers.
Right, whoever does it, okay.
To do that, to figure that out. It's a site that I've been working with, trying to get the developers to do something for years. So I'm hoping that this is a catalyst to getting them to thinking outside the box, thinking of new things. But anything to help the town center.
Right, oh yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yes, there's a gentleman here who's also hiding under a hat.
Bill Lasano, Precinct 4. To add on to what Mr. Tate was saying, I know one of the business owners on Grant Ave. I believe Murray owns that. Let's say Murray owns all of it, or ends up buying all of that.
Sure.
Which might happen. How many businesses, and let's say he wants to do all this commercial, none of those businesses, Chevron Plumbing, Linco Fire Protection, Tint Works, whatever it is now, are going to be the ground level floor of any of these buildings. So let's say Murray does buy all of it. How many businesses will be displaced if, let's say, all of those, that whole 2 rows of businesses that are on both sides of Grant Ave need a new spot? How many businesses are there?
So I haven't done the analysis for businesses that are there. I mean, again, this is just an option. It would have to go to the planning board. These businesses do have leases. Now, obviously, you can buy out a lease, but it's not a quick process that you'd have to go through. And so, I have spoken with Mike Murray. He never said, whether or not, this was going to happen or not, but it's an option. It's really the first step in trying to realize the intent and vision of the town center overlay.
Thank you.
Ms. Warren.
Appreciate it. Chris Warren, Precinct 4. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. When I think about middle housing, I think about more than apartments. I think about ownership options such as condos and townhouses. So I'm wondering, how does that figure into this? Thank you.
Liz, go ahead.
Sure. So it figures in the sense that we wanted to provide housing options without completely removing the commercial tax base. So if we, rezoned it and allowed all different types of middle housing, which again, desperately needed in town, we are not, we're giving up that commercial tax base. And so that was the decision, and that's why this style was decided in the town center.
Mr. Pearson. Then we'll get to Mr. Glantz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Monty Pearson, Precinct 3. I have a question and a comment. The question, the comment is that I think that this is a way of providing housing for young families that, we've talked about having people who grow up in town not having any place they can afford to live. And unless the town wants to get into the business of building housing itself, then this is one of the ways in which we can encourage the private sector to provide housing that is not as expensive as apartments down by the mall, and instead be more, a little bit more affordable and maybe a little bit larger, so you can have a few young kids at least there before you move on. And so I think that this is a good stab at doing this, unless we want to get into big real estate development. So the question I have is that I don't have a strong memory of what businesses there are on Terry Avenue, but are they relatively low-paying taxpayers? The businesses, that because it's a warehouse, it's not a high-tax district?
I can't speak to that. All I know is that it's giving you guys the commercial tax rate. So I can't speak to, what, the Iron Mountain is versus the Northern Business Machine, but it is still a greater amount of revenue than you would get if it was purely residential.
What I do know is that... Am I going to cut off? No. What I mean is that you said you've been trying to get Iron Mountain to do more, develop more. Does that mean that there are these undesirable businesses, or are they just not low performing and we can get more tax revenue out of Terry Avenue being commercial and residential?
Through you, I think that the impetus isn't, that they're underperforming or low performing. It's that we've heard from residents that they would like to see that they would not like to be directly abutting commercial property, that is loud, they're emptying dumpsters at all hours, that they would like to see a transition between, warehouse space and single-family residential, and they'd like to see something else there. And we've been hearing about it for years.
Okay.
Mr. Glantz.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nolan Glantz, Precinct 1. Forgive me, but this does feel like deja vu all over again. So 20 years ago, those nice pictures that you showed with buildings right up next to a nice open sidewalk with dining on the sidewalk and all that stuff like in Lexington Center, that was the vision 20 years ago. And we tried and failed to create that. So if I'm looking at the picture, though, none of the purple touches the main corridor that we're interested in, which is Cambridge Street. So this is not actually going to create any of that. It'll create maybe some nice mini pockets of stuff off the beaten path, but the beaten path will stay exactly as it is with the used bookstore way in the back of the parking lots, and the Cambridge Street corridor is going to stay exactly the same. So I don't know who this benefits, but it doesn't really give us the vision at all. And if you're saying, well, it's a baby step, why are we starting with this step? The only thing I think that this benefits is it increases the revenue opportunity for the landowner. That's all I see as really the benefit. I don't think this gets us what we want. I'd rather see it, if we want to do this, do it in the corridor, not the areas outside of the corridor that are still in the district, but really not the corridor. So I don't understand why we're doing it back there and not up front. I think it's backwards and isn't going to benefit us, but going to benefit Mr. Murray. And I'm not sure why we're going to do that.
Ms. Willard. Then we'll get to Mr. Parsons.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sally Willard, Precinct 4. I'm going to move the question.
We have a motion on to move the question. All of those in favor of moving the question? All those opposed? It's a clear 2/3. The question has been moved. So let's vote on the question. It's a 2/3, requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed? Well, we're going to have a count. It looks like more than 2/3, but I need a number. So, to all those in favor, please stand.
It's 2/3. Yeah. 23. And one online.
16. And one online.
And one online.
Okay. All sit down, please. And all those opposed, please stand.
You're just so fast.
12. 3.
2 times 28. That's 2.
I got
2 times 28.
59 to 28.
56.
It does.
Yeah. 59 to 28.
There being 59 in favor. What? Sit down. We're done. I got the count. There being 59 in favor and 28 opposed, it squeaks by and passes. Now I hear a motion to adjourn. Sounds like a good thing to do. All those in favor, opposed, we're adjourned. See you on Wednesday.